Hello everybody and welcome back to Miniature Hub and another How to Play a Song of Ice and Fire the Miniatures game video. Today I'm going to be going over NCUs, which stand for Non-Combat Unit, and they are quite a unique feature to this game, something I really found cool when I first found out about the game were the NCUs. They represent all the characters in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire that don't actually take part in the fighting on the battlefield, but they do all the behind the scenes stuff, all the politics that are involved when playing the game. So NCUs are activated like a combat unit. So you put them in, they're in your army, you can activate a combat unit, or you can choose to activate an NCU on your turn. Unlike combat units, they only have one action, which is to be placed on the tactics board on one of the 5 zones here. So the 5 zones on the tactics board are the crown, the wealth, which some people call the bags, the tactics, which some people just call letters, the combat, which some people just call the swords, and the maneuver, which some people just call the horse. And when you activate your NCU, you obviously just pick them up, like I'm doing with Lady Val here, and you just decide which one you want to place it on, and then you just put them on the spot, just like that. When you place your NCU on one of those zones, you immediately trigger the effect of that zone, which is described underneath. So for the crown, whenever you place your NCU on the crown, one enemy unit must make a panic test and suffers -1 to their roll. For the wealth, when you place your NCU on the wealth zone, you restore up to 3 wounds and remove 1 condition token from your unit. For the tactics, you draw 2 tactics cards and place any 1 condition token on an enemy unit. For the combat, 1 friendly combat unit makes a free attack action, and for the maneuver, 1 friendly combat unit may make a free maneuver or retreat action. So there are a couple rules that you need to know for NCUs. You are allowed to pass your NCU's activation. So say I didn't want to actually put Lady Val on the tactics board for whatever reason, I could just say I'm passing her turn and I wouldn't be placing her on. Obviously, this isn't necessarily recommended because, you generally don't really want to pass your unit's turn. You want to make sure everyone does everything to their full potential, but in some scenarios, you may want to pass. If the tactics board is full, you can no longer activate any NCUs unless an ability or an effect creates an opening. So this can sometimes happen when both players bring 3 NCUs each, and obviously there's only 5 slots, so you can't put the 6th NCU, whoever unfortunate enough to have the 6th NCU, you can't put that on the tactics board. But there are a variety of abilities in the game that can potentially remove NCUs from the tactics board, and then you would get your opening. So the tactics zone is, well, the tactics board is cleared at the end of the round, and all your NCUs are unactivated, so, which happens in the cleanup phase. So just like all your combat units, once the round's over, everyone's activated everything. You then unactivate them, you clear the tactics board for the next round, for you to then put your NCUs back on. So don't worry if you think they're just going to stay there for the rest of the game, they don't. They behave really similarly to combat units in the way they activate and unactivate. So NCUs aren't just there to be placed on the tactics board and to trigger whatever zone effect you choose. NCUs have a wide variety of different abilities depending on which NCU you choose. The most common ability type is the influence ability, which essentially is when you place your NCU on the tactics zone, whichever one you choose, you then read the card, what it says, and you can attach the influence to either a friendly unit or an enemy unit, depending on the effects, and they influence that unit you attach them to. So there's just a few rules to go over, and then I'll give you an example of an influence ability. You can only have one friendly and one enemy influence on a unit at a given time. So you can't stack friendly influences on one unit. You can only have one friendly and one enemy influence. They are not attachment cards, so don't be afraid thinking that, oh, I'm going over my attachment limit. You're not. Don't worry. They're not attachments. They're never going to be classed as an attachment. Influences are removed in the cleanup phase, which is the same of when you remove all your NCUs, so that just happens at the same time. So just think that when you're removing your NCUs, you're also removing any influences. There are some effects in the game that cause a combat unit to lose all their abilities, but this does not include influences unless specifically mentioned. I can't quite remember what ability it is that does that, but just know that unless it specifically says lose influence abilities, it does not count as losing your influence. So yeah, that's just a bonus. So I have an example of a influence NCU. I've got Khaleesi here. If I placed her on the tactics board, just like so, I then get her NCU card, which I will just put up on the screen so you can read the ability. And then you basically place the NCU card next to the combat unit, or just wherever you want, just to remember that that influence is attached to that combat unit. So the influence for Daenerys is each time Daenerys influences a unit, remove one condition token from them. While influencing a unit, that unit's melee attacks may re-roll any attack dice, which is very nice. So she gives them re-rolls on attack dice, and she allows one condition token to be removed. You can place them on a friendly or an enemy, but obviously that one's aimed towards a friendly combat unit. Another common type of NCU ability is the zone replace, which is basically when you place your NCU, like Lady Val, on the zone, you can then replace the zone's effect. So you don't do, so if I place her on the tactics zone, for example, you don't do the draw 2 tactics cards and all that stuff. You do whatever the zone replace is. So for Lady Val, each time Lady Val claims a zone, you may replace that zone's effect with one friendly combat unit performs one maneuver or retreat action. So obviously if someone's taking the horses and you really need to get someone out of a melee, you can take, I don't know, the crown or the tactics or whatever, and you can just get them out with the zone replace. Just note that it did say may replace that zone's effect, so you don't have to replace the zone's effect. It's really up to you what you do. Another common NCU type are NCUs that have order tokens on them at the beginning of the game, which is what Illyrio has. So Illyrio begins the game with 2 order tokens. Each time Illyrio claims a zone, you may remove 1 order token from him. If you do, replace that zone's effect with target 1 friendly combat unit. They restore 3 wounds. 1 enemy they are engaged with becomes weakened. So as you can see, the tokens represent a sort of charge. Basically, he has 2 charges to do this. So he can claim the tactic zone or whatever zone you choose, and you spend 1 order token to do the zone replace. So it's not like Lady Val, where Lady Val could just zone replace whenever she wanted. Illyrio has to spend 1 of his order tokens, 1 of his charges, to do the zone replace. Generally, if an NCU has order tokens they spend, it's probably because the ability is quite powerful, which it is. One thing just to bear in mind, the order tokens do not come back. You only get 2. Some NCUs do allow you to like refill order tokens. You've really got to read the card. But if it says Illyria begins the game with 2 order tokens and nowhere else on the card does it say he gets any more, then you have to assume you've only got 2. So I've got one more NCU that I'd just like to talk about, which is Doran Martell. It's not necessarily about his abilities in terms of his card. I will just put up his card just if you wanted to pause the video and read it. But I really wanted to talk about this really cool thing that he gets called the Water Gardens, which is essentially an extra tactic zone that you can apply to the tactics board. So as you can see, it says there can only be 1 Water Gardens in the game. While you control this zone, opponents do not count as controlling tactic zones for abilities or tactics cards, which is quite nice. On your opponent's next turn, they must activate a combat unit if possible. So what you do is if you have Doran Martell, it says you have to have Doran Martell, Prince of Dawn, so you can't have his Commander edition. It has to be his regular NCU edition. You take the Water Gardens and you just place it next to the tactics zone, like so. Basically, it makes the tactics board have 6 zones. So, as we were talking about earlier, if you did have 3 NCUs for both players, you can actually technically fit all 6 on the tactics board, which is quite nice. There is one other character that has sort of an extra zone to attach to the board, which is Pyat. He has the Tower of Undying. I don't actually have Pyat. I can't remember what it does, but I think it's something to do with like discarding cards or something. But I just wanted to show you what to do with that, because some people, you know, this is one of the reasons why I actually really wanted the Martells, because I quite like the idea that Doran can add an extra zone to the tactics board. I think it's quite unique, and you can just claim it like any other zone. And you can replace the effects of it, I do believe, which is pretty nice. So thank you all for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments down below, and I will answer them as soon as possible. So I will see you all next time. Goodbye!